to steal an artifact. The Circulum Infinitus.
Diving right in, something I thought was really great about Absolution is we're really getting to see the Tevinter Imperium animated for the very first time. We start in the city of Nessum, and I wanted to know what it was like to approach Tevinter for the first time in this way.
It's kind of really fun to imagine, like, what does a high-end Tevinter resort town kind of feel like? And what does sort of, building out the Black Divine Summer Palace, I remember thinking sort of like, it's like Tevinter Versailles, and what that would look like. So it was really challenging, but also really rewarding to kind of be able to create this sort of very opulent view of Tevinter, at the same time kind of trying to address and explore some of the dark parts of the nation itself.
One of the ways we've always kind of talked about Tevinter is very much in a lot of ways like the ancient Roman Empire. It's this civilization that has over time conquered and brought a lot of different influences into their architecture. And so that was kind of where we went for a little bit of that, getting some of those feelings of, the old Roman style, but also pulling in some of the influences of the places that they conquered and they took influences from, really getting that feeling of what does this place look like that's been such a massive weight on the fabric of Thedas for so long, and what kinds of influences did they pull in?
John, earlier you talked about Thedas and approaching building this world, and Dragon Age has such a fleshed out history and lore to all of these nations. And I think that's something that I'd love for both of you to speak to, is how these characters, even though they're totally new to all of us, they do feel like such a part of the series already. What was it like kind of building these new characters, but also meshing them within the world of Thedas and the world of Dragon Age?
So much fun. It was an absolute delight to build these characters and, work with BioWare to, tweak them and make sure, like, we made them feel exactly like they came from a real place, and try and treat Thedas like a real place, but they still felt true to the Dragon Age brand, which is really fun for me because it means you get to write really flawed characters, like there's a speech that Miriam gives toward the end of the season where she says, I'm looking for some decent people. And I feel like that describes a lot of Dragon Age heroes, is they're not necessarily the most heroic people or the most perfect people, but there's some decent people that at some point have to just be heroes because they're the ones that are there.
There's so much to draw from in the history of what Thedas is, that part of building these realistic characters is finding out why, like, what are their goals, how do they exist in this world, and what parts of this history have they experienced themselves? They have a history that's tied to the events, because ultimately, like, let's be real, the Dragon Age world is a place where bad things happen pretty often. So there's a good chance that something bad has happened either to you or directly, adjacent to you at some point.
Speaking of bad things, I do want to jump into spoilers a little bit. Specifically, the very, very last scene, I screamed. I think seeing Meredith again in the form we're seeing her is insane. Did you know from the beginning that she was going to make an appearance like that? What was the decision-making process in having her appear at the end as she did? We
explored a few different options, but as we were developing the show, there's kind of something special about how much we all loved to hate Meredith. And we realized that we had this really cool opportunity to really take the community by surprise. Your cries of anguish give me joy. One of the themes that we explore is the sort of the price of giving everything to the cause. And, Hera, who truly believes herself to be like a true believer in the cause, who's willing to sacrifice anything for a cause, including, it turns out, the woman that she loves. And so to have her run up against Meredith and to have Miriam run up against Meredith, like if you think of someone who, when you think of Dragon Age characters on like a righteous crusade, you have to think about Knight Commander Meredith.
Yeah, and I think Meredith is just such an interesting character that we, probably one of my favorite antagonists we've ever done. And just, there's definitely something about her that just, I think, like you said, appeals to the fan base, appeals to the Dragon Age 2 fan, but she has so much unresolved business that was really exciting to have an opportunity to take characters. Ultimately, we wanted to use a villain that was big enough that it would feel like, we didn't want this to just feel like an inconsequential side story. We wanted this to feel like a major part of the world building of the mythos of what Dragon Age is. And Meredith just felt like a pretty much the perfect option for who would be doing, sending someone to get something like that, and who would be willing to make the kinds of sacrifices for their goals and Meredith came to mind as like, no, that is a perfect option. And I think I remember when that meeting happened and when that was proposed, and there was just this moment of like, oh, okay, wow, yeah, that actually is perfect.
I think it's seeing the Red Templars and the growth of the Red Lyrium. How deep are her clutches in Kirkwall currently?
Oh my gosh. I mean, is there any such thing as a good day in Kirkwall? I feel like a good day in Kirkwall is like rain in LA. There's like 5 every year.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's not a ton we can say, but I will say find out more at some point for sure. And I think ultimately, though, it's what Mairghread said. Kirkwall is not a great place, no matter what, and this is only making it worse. So.
Yeah, never a good day when Knight Commander Meredith makes an appearance, I'd say. Were there any other cameos that you were exploring, or like any you'd like to include in maybe a theoretical season 2?
I mean, I think all cards are on the table for me. My relationship with BioWare it's sort of like being the fangirl in the candy store, where I just sort of ask, like, what if I have this? Can I have this? Can I have that? And then they just tell me no when I'm not. So they're like, well, maybe this instead. So if you guys have thought of a character to add to the show, I've definitely also thought about that character, because there are just so many wonderful characters in Dragon Age, and it'll all just come down to timing and begging.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. It's like everyone is kind of on the table. But it really does, as Mairghread said, it comes down to which characters are, because we always have a running internal idea of like, we know this character's doing this, we know this character's doing this, we know this character's doing this. Even if it's not something that we're always sharing widely, we have an idea into who is available, who could potentially be a part of these other adventures and these other, this other media. And, Absolution is no exception to that rule.
And unfortunately, that is all we have time for today. I could ask a million questions because Absolution was so fun. Looking forward to what may be next.
People like us don't change the world, Kira, because people like you never try. You have to stop running from the past, Miriam. If you can't do it now, I worry that maybe you never will.